Hey, this is Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, 3rd edition out now, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart, weekly music news for the new music business.
From Robert Levine at Billboard, the AI music deals are here. They raise big, complicated questions.
From our friend Mark Mulligan over at MIDiA, AI music creators, music's superfans.
And from Erik Hayden over at Variety, AI is transforming how we think about music. I don't know, Jay, do you think AI is kind of on people's minds these days? Sure seems like it.
What's this AI you speak of?
What is this AI you speak of? Well, we are going deep today, so we're glad you're here. We're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, good day to you, Jay. It is great to see you. We've been chatting a little bit this morning, and I think we're ready for the show to start.
Yeah, let's let it go. Before we get into the news, we've got a very special Your Morning Coffee podcast episode. It's our second AI roundtable, and it's out. And we cover everything from GAWs, GAWs, attribution, remuneration, and regurgitation with some of the brightest minds in the business. Kristin Robinson, Vicky Nauman, Bobby Osinski, and Virginie Berger. Don't miss this one. It's a good one.
And we had a wonderful time doing it. It was really fun. Also coming this week, another special episode of the podcast, a conversation with Livia Tortella, CEO and founder of Black Box. Livia has taken her career from Polygram Canada to Island Def Jam, Atlantic Records, and on to co-president of Warner Brothers Records here in Southern California and Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was a fantastic conversation. That'll drop probably around Wednesday. So as you're driving to your Thanksgiving meal, you can listen in. There is a new behind the set list, and it's with the band Baby Metal. For the uninitiated, Baby Metal is a Japanese heavy metal band fronted by 3 young women, Sue Metal, Moa Metal, and Momo Metal, and backed by 4 stellar musicians. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to the show, but Glenn Peoples rocked it and handled the interview solo. Check that one out, behind the set list, Baby Metal.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, Baby Metal's music is a genre called kawaii metal, which means cute metal. It makes sense when you consider the band is fronted by 3 females who sing and dance like a Japanese idol group.
Yeah, they're amazing. And coming soon on Behind the Set List, we've recorded 3 episodes that are in the can that are coming soon. Lady A, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and we just spoke with John 5. You don't want to miss that one. It's really good. There's another podcast that I just sort of discovered. It's called the State of Independence podcast, and it launched September 11th, and it's a new music podcast series exploring the hidden stories of the world's greatest independent record labels and the people that know them best, the founders. These are the people that built them and artists who grew up with them.
Yeah, so it's hosted by music journalist and podcast producer Rob Fitzpatrick. Season 1 features the saga of Beggar's Banquet, an iconic punk-era label that would eventually spawn an indie empire. All episodes are now available.
Yeah, and speaking of podcasts, the latest episode of Kristin Robinson's On the Record podcast for Billboard, it features someone you and I really like, and that is Imogen Heap. She talks about her views on AI music, as well as the 20th anniversary of her influential album, Speak for Yourself. Here's a little clip from Kristin Robinson's On the Record.
When AI becomes the next pop star, who gets the spotlight? The artist or the algorithm? You might have caught recent headlines about so-called AI artists, or artists that heavily rely on AI tools like image, voice, or music models to make their songs. There's one artist, Zania Monet, for example, who recently signed a record deal and is climbing the gospel charts and is playing on radio stations across the country. Meanwhile, last week, a bunch of songs in the top 10 on the country sales chart were also songs that stemmed from this kind of AI artist. At a time when AI-generated songs seem to be exploding, cropping up everywhere, from TikTok trends to the Billboard charts, it felt like the perfect time to dive into how this will impact artists and what can be done to protect human creativity in the process. And I couldn't dream of a better guest to join me here today to discuss this topic than Imogen Heap.
Definitely one to check out. Surefire Media's best calendar is out. This calendar is one of our go-to resources. It has everything you need in one place. Festivals, conventions, events, celebrations, and cultural moments. Our link is in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter this week, and it is amazing how much work goes into that because it is epic. It's got everything in it.
It really does. I have it on my desk, and every time they update it, I toss away the old one and keep the new one. Last week, in case you missed it, the 59th Annual CMA Awards, and Lainey Wilson took home top honor. Entertainer of the Year. My family was gathered around the TV cheering on Sav Madigan and Lainey's stellar band. You've heard me talk about Sav and her band, The Accidentals, for years. Love you, Sav. That was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and Zach Top won CMA New Artist of the Year. Riley Green, Ella Langley, and Lainey Wilson tied with 3 wins each. If you did miss it, you can watch individual CMA Award performances on YouTube and stream the full show over on Hulu.
Yeah, and one final note, I love seeing Kenny Chesney perform. He had a tribute to my longtime friend and client, Brett James, who sadly passed away recently, and it was on the video screens behind him. So thank you, Kenny Chesney. That was a beautiful tribute. In the news this week, there was a really interesting story about tickets. The headline was "Ticket Reselling for Profit to be Banned in the UK After a Letter Signed by Dua Lipa, Coldplay, and more." And that was from Elise Schaefer over at Variety. Reselling concert tickets for above face value is set to be banned in the UK. The move comes days after a letter signed by Dua Lipa, Coldplay, Sam Fender, and more. It urged the government to act to protect fans from exploitation. So whenever we're talking about ticketing and all the shenanigans that go around, speculative tickets and those types of things, we talked to Stephen Parker, who is the executive director of NIVA. That's the National Independent Venue Association. I had the pleasure of talking with him this week. Let's listen in. Stephen, good to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jay. It's great to see you.
So before we get into the news this week, remind our listeners how predatory resale practices and speculative tickets hurt fans and artists.
Resale seems rampant with fraud. It seems rampant with tickets that may never be delivered to a consumer. It seems rampant with tickets that the consumer thought that they bought not being delivered to them, with either worse seats, different seats, or maybe to a different show altogether. This is what we're seeing across the spectrum when it comes to resale. This is what we're seeing as significant issues that are making it harder for fans to connect with artists and to come to independent venues every day. And that's why we've continued to engage.
There was a story this week I couldn't wait to reach out to you about. The UK government plans to ban ticket resales that have inflated prices, and ticket resellers argue that ticket verification works better. What say you?
Ticket verification. Jay, I don't even know what that means. Listen, the CEO of StubHub had a disastrous earnings call last week, their first earnings call since going public and getting on the New York Stock Exchange. The last question asked to him was about speculative tickets. And he said that speculative tickets were business as usual and that there is nothing to talk about. They also, StubHub, Vivid Seats, all the resale platforms have been fighting back across the country and across the world against price gouging measures. I think it's important to note that the UK is not the first to put in place a price cap on resale. Other EU countries like Austria and Germany and France have had resale price caps or just bans on any resale above face value, period, for years. At least the last decade, we have seen this incredibly prevalent. Australia, they are one of the newer additions to these restrictions, not only nationally, but in every single jurisdiction, every single equivalent state jurisdiction in Australia. This isn't new. Ultimately, the StubHubs and Vivid Seats of the world would like to say that they are the safe place from fraud. This is just not true. This week on Wednesday, we put out a whole bunch of what we would call receipts, evidence that shows that shows that went for sale this week that are not for sale yet. There are tickets that do not exist, ticket listings for quote unquote tickets that do not exist that were posted this week on StubHub, on Vivid Seats, on other resale platforms. This happens every day. And ultimately, the consumer may get a refund. And if you go look up StubHub on Reddit, it'll show you that refund that StubHub promises doesn't always happen, even if a ticket's not real or they never get it or they can't go to the show. But ultimately, there is fraud on these resale platforms. And ultimately, they may say that they'll take these listings down. They may say that these consumers will get a refund. But ultimately, if that consumer has flown across the world or flown to another state or gotten a hotel room or paid for a really expensive Uber to get to their show, they're not going to get that money back. And a refund on the ticket, if they get it, is not going to replace the money that they've lost trying to get to the show and the disappointment that they will have at the door when they can't get in, and the trouble that independent venues and arenas and everybody in between consistently have when these tickets that quote unquote tickets that StubHub has sold to them don't work. So StubHub is wrong. Vivid Seats is wrong. And ultimately, the studies that they have paid that they are citing are ones that they have paid for that have no basis in reality. So the short answer is no, I do not agree with them. Price caps are the only way to protect consumers.
What's the current status of legislation? We've been talking about the BOTS Act, the Better Online Ticket Sales Act. What's the status?
So here's the good. The good is we've started to see increased enforcement of the BOTS Act under this administration. We saw one of the largest ticket brokers in the country, maybe the world, Key Investment Group, had a case brought against by the Federal Trade Commission, only the second case brought in the history of the BOTS Act. And then a month later, they brought the third case against the largest industrial scalper in the world, Live Nation and Ticketmaster. And so ultimately, we are very optimistic about the future of a BOTS Act that is actually enforced by the federal government. It is a good thing that this is a priority for the current administration and for the current Federal Trade Commission. We hope that that continues. There's a bill in Congress called the Main Event Ticketing Act to strengthen the BOTS Act and to increase data reporting from ticketing companies when there's been a security circumvention on their website. Right now, ticketing companies aren't actually required to report to the FTC if their systems have been compromised in any way. If that law passes, then that will change, and that's a good thing. It also strengthens the enforcement authority of the FTC, so that already kind of increased enforcement that we're seeing under this administration hopefully can get stronger if this bill passes. We've heard that bill that has been out there for the last 3 years might actually move in Congress over in the next couple of months. We would absolutely support that. I think the coalition, the Fix the Ticks coalition that we put together would support that. It's a good bill. We hope that it passes. That's where the good news in DC stops. The future of consumer protection, at least the immediate future of consumer protection, is in the States. One of the inspirations we've heard from the advocates in the UK who pushed for this resale price cap is Maine. In June of this year, the governor of Maine signed into law a resale price cap that says that in the state of Maine, if you are a Maine consumer, you cannot be charged more than 10% of the total original cost of the ticket if you were buying on resale. We have seen similar price caps introduced for state legislative sessions next year that will begin in January and February of 2026. Last month, there was a Democratic bill in Wisconsin that had a very similar price cap to what actually passed in Maine. And this is really good news. Republicans said, we want our own price cap. So they introduced a bill that actually went further and is more stringent than the Democratic bill that was introduced on a price cap. It says that you can't sell a ticket on resale for above what you paid for it, period. You can't tack on any fees. You can't do any of that. This is a bipartisan movement. There are Republicans and prominent Republican figures that are speaking up and saying, you know what? It's time for concert tickets to be just like airlines, just like hotel rooms. And we could not agree more. So the future is bright, at least in 2026, for positive legislative action, particularly in the states, to make sure that consumers are protected. And we're going to do everything within our power to make sure that those bills pass. Resale should be very concerned. Resale platforms that have allowed unchecked predatory resale to happen on their platforms for years because they're making billions of dollars off it, we're going to make sure that stops.
Yeah, it sounds like real progress is being made. It's super exciting. Where can our listeners go to get involved and to learn more?
Absolutely. You can go to fixthetix.org. There is a place on there for you to sign up for our updates. You also can send a message to your state legislators, to your governors, and to your your congressional members, all in one fell swoop by filling out a brief form and telling them that you care about ticketing reform. Fixthetix.org. We're here for any folks in the industry, for any fans that want to get engaged. We need as much help as possible to get price caps passed across the U.S.
Yeah, Stephen, we appreciate your hard work. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. We appreciate it.
Another interesting piece in Music Business Worldwide by Mandy DeLugdug. Tidal opens direct uploads for indie artists, but tracks won't earn royalties. The feature positions Block-owned Tidal as a competitor to SoundCloud, which pioneered the direct upload and discovery model for independent artists. The new Tidal upload service allows artists to post tracks directly to the music service, where the tracks become available alongside the platform's catalog of 180 million songs. Wow.
Uploaded tracks are accessible to all listeners, including those without paid subscriptions, and artists can keep tracks private to share only with selected collaborators, sort of like SoundCloud. So there's a significant caveat, though. According to the FAQs, tracks uploaded via Tidal's new tool do not generate streaming royalties.
Okay. A good piece from Daniel Tenser, also over at Music Business Worldwide. Spotify acquires song sample and remix database Who Sampled. So they've acquired music database Who Sampled, which provides information about song covers, samples, and remixes. Spotify quietly announced the acquisition in a blog post last Wednesday, in which it unveiled a number of new song credit features, including an upcoming song DNA function for premium users, which Spotify said will be powered by Who Sampled.
Yeah, that's interesting. And they're going to, show us some song covers, samples, remixes. That's super cool. There was some news this week about TikTok. The headline was, TikTok is letting users control how much AI content they see. And this is from a piece in The Verge by Dominic Preston. The new AI slider will appear along with TikTok's other content controls under Manage Topics, which currently allows users to set how they want to see the content, in areas including dance, current affairs, fitness, and all that sort of stuff. Just like those sliders, this AI control slider will allow users to request or see more or less AI material with 2 levels in either direction. So this AI slider will only work if TikTok itself knows what content is made with AI. So it's working on improving its detection too.
Very interesting. A piece in The Guardian by Robert Booth. Paul McCartney joins music industry protest against AI with Silent Track. The former Beatle is releasing a track of an almost completely silent recording studio as part of a music industry protest against copyright theft by artificial intelligence companies. Other artists already backing the campaign include Sam Fender, Kate Bush, Hans Zimmer, and the Pet Shop Boys.
It's an album of silence. I love it. I have to get that.
John Cage would be proud.
Yes,
indeed. Well, Jay, before we get rolling, what do you say we thank the sponsors? Man, we certainly appreciate their participation every week.
We sure do. The Your Morning Coffee podcast is sponsored by SoundCloud. Keep 100% of your earnings. SoundCloud has launched the first true all-in-one subscription for artists, so artists have even more ways to earn and keep what's theirs. Creators can distribute, monetize, and grow their fan base all in one place. 100% of the royalties on every distributed track across every major platform, and direct fan support with no cuts. Just complete control over your music and your earnings. Learn more about the all-in-one artist subscription today with a 1-month free trial. Just use a promo code YMCFREE on SoundCloud. That's a 1-month free trial. Use a promo code YMCFREE.
Great stuff. Yes, we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Jeremy Young, Hypebot is published and supported by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yeah, we've been congratulating Bands in Town because they just passed 100 million live music fans that trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendation, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 700,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates to over 4 billion music fans across all platforms.
Wow. Well, and every week I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and the Warner Music Groups.
That's right. And every week I get to do this with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And we get on typically for an hour beforehand to talk about food, guitars, records, books, and this morning, I learned about the Nocaster. So we had the Broadcaster early. Then between that and the Telecaster was the Nocaster.
Indeed, and it just had a Fender logo on the headstock.
That's right.
That was it. No name below it.
And if you see one of those, grab it because it's probably worth more than your house.
Yes. If you happen to be at a garage sale and we see one of those, just take it and run.
Yeah, or send it to me. Let's jump into the stories this week. The first one is from our friend Mark Mulligan over at MIDiA. Fantastic piece. And this was a lead story in Your Morning Coffee this week. The headline was AI Music Creators, Music's Superfans. And Mark writes that not a week seems to go by without some big news in the world of music AI. Hot on the heels of UMG's Udio deal, GEMA just secured a favorable ruling against OpenAI. Lots of news.
Indeed. Over the course of the year, however, court rulings have fallen roughly evenly for media companies and AI companies, or have had such narrow interpretations applied that they have limited use as effective legal precedents. It is becoming clear that legislation, litigation, and regulation cannot move quickly enough for media companies to keep up with AI.
Right. And Mark writes that, even if this wasn't the case, there's a new dynamic that the music industry needs to wrap its head around. Consumers that use generative AI to make music are also some of the industry's most valuable superfans.
Indeed, in so many respects, AI is best considered as an accelerant rather than something entirely new, intensifying pre-existing trends. AI music absolutely fits this trend, he says. Over the course of the last decade, including a supercharged COVID bump, accessible music tech has enabled ever more people to become music creators.
Yeah, we've been talking about this quite a bit lately, about the end user, becoming the creator. Mm-hmm. So Mark writes that AI simply lowered the barriers to entry even further. The debate over whether text prompts constitutes creativity will continue to run, just like the same debate still runs for sampling. But what is clear is that more people are now making music because of AI. Tom York might have sung "Anyone Can Play Guitar," but truly anyone can write a text prompt. Why this matters? It enables more music fans to take one step further and actually make music, the definitive expression of fandom. And he has a chart in this article that says AI music creators are music's super fans. And he talks about, how they purchase more, they listen more.
Indeed. So playing and creating music has long been the ultimate superfan behavior. Whether that be a teen learning to play the riff for It Smells Like Teen Spirit in the 90s or a kid making music in her bedroom with BandLab today, it should come as no surprise that generative AI music users also tend to be music superfans. According to data from the forthcoming MIDiA report, AI and Consumer Creation, the superfan factor, generative AI music users over-index for every music fan metric. And he says, and by a lot.
Yeah, this includes being 4 times more likely than overall consumers to buy merch and 1.5 times more likely to have a music subscription. They're also strongly over-indexing for all streaming consumption metrics. Of course, arguably the biggest Gen AI music risk is bad actors creating AI slop at scale, whether that simply be to harvest lean-back listening royalties or to wash dirty money. However, the music industry must not paint all generative AI music creators with the same brush.
Right. Mark says we can debate the quality of the music until everyone is red in the face. And undoubtedly, there needs to be new lanes carved out for this music to occupy. What cannot be ignored is that consumer creators of AI music are also many of the music superfans that are disproportionately delivering monetary value into the music industry ecosystem.
Right. And finally, Mark writes that in some respects, the risks being a rerun of music file sharing, the biggest fans are doing something the music industry doesn't want them to do. This time, though, the stakes are higher as they are also generating a major portion of its revenue. So if you want the latest entertainment research and insights directly to your inbox, subscribe to the MIDiA newsletter. They've got you covered. Just go to MIDiaResearch.com.
Yes, indeed. Excellent article.
Yeah.
This next one's from The Hollywood Reporter, Erik Hayden over there. AI is transforming how we think about music. An exclusive nationally representative survey of a little over 2,200 Americans reveals a love-hate affair with AI music and stark divisions across generations and party lines. A flood of AI slop is raging through our screens. By one count, there's 50,000 AI songs uploaded daily to a major streaming service, and 97% of listeners can't tell when they hear a fully AI-generated track.
Yeah, we reported on that last week. In another survey, about 1 in 4 of all producers conceded that they're using AI tools, while others may quietly say that the tech allows them to produce dozens of ideas for a song, cutting the time it takes to work on a single track. AI-generated robot bands and Mad Lib-style names, Burning Rust, Velvet Sundown, they've inundated streamers, racking up tens of millions of listens by splitting out uncanny versions of country and rock songs that sound, just a bit off if a listener cares to notice.
That's right. If a listener cares to notice.
Right.
Very, very good point. This year is a pivot point for many working artists who make a living by recording songs, playing them live, and possibly convincing other humans to seek out their work and buy their merch. As AI tools democratize music creation and reshape what productivity should look like for a singer or musician, things are starting to get weird too. In a rut, upload your voice and stems and have AI make 20 versions of your voice singing new versions of your work. That sentence may produce creeping existentialism for some artists, to say the least.
Exactly. To take America's temperature, The Hollywood Reporter partnered with the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami on a nationally representative poll, it's easy for you to say, of around 2,200 U.S. adults in the aim to understand listening habits, willingness to embrace AI-generated AI-generated music, and opinions on key issues like streaming pay for artists. This survey, conducted by decision intelligence firm Morning Consult, highlights dividing lines on how AI is scrambling the industry.
Right. So the Frost School of Music Dean Shelton Shelley-Berg said it's not much different between the 70-year-olds and the 18-year-olds. Some people are just very frightened and others are very excited, she said, on attitudes about AI on the campus. There's almost nobody ambivalent about it.
Right. The top line note from this Frost School and THR poll: just over slightly half of America isn't interested in listening to AI music, even if their favorite artist made it. And more than 66% of the public say that they've never listened to an AI music track. That's if they can recognize a song is created with AI. That still leaves a big 32% of America that's perfectly fine with getting tunes from the latest AI avatar of pop, rap, country, or rock, a phenomenon that's already starting to play out on Billboard charts.
Right. Well, U.S. adults are, however, reticent about the idea of AI creators ripping off Taylor Swift or Paul McCartney's voice for their own AI-generated songs without permission from the original creator. More specifically from the poll, 62% of respondents say that AI music creators definitely or probably should get permission from the original artist when replicating their voice in AI-generated music. So let's go to the charts on the AI questions, Jay.
Yes. The first chart, there's a few of these charts, and we just want to sort of describe them since you can't really see them. The first one is, they ask folks, are you interested in listening to, for example, music from your favorite artist that was made with the help of AI? And, over 50% are really not interested. And when they ask how often, if ever, do you listen to music that you know is made using AI, about 66% said never.
So the first graph says, if we're talking about should creators making AI music, should they look for permission from the original artist when they're replicating their voice? When we're talking about baby boomers, 44% of them say they definitely should. But as you go around the horn on this diagram and you get to younger and younger people, it gets a lot less. And I'm even shocked, to be honest, that only 44% of baby boomers said you should. You would have thought that would be a much bigger number.
Right. I mean, you would think that they would want everyone, to get permission from the original artist if you're replicating their voice. That's a little bit crazy. The next one says, should you pay the original music creators when mimicking their style in AI? And that sort of varies again from baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials. But in general, most people think that they should.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they ask the question, should AI be used to create music without human musical contributions? Well, again, it kind of breaks down to very few people say that it should, although, it's 28% in some cases, but most say they should not. And so that's kind of not surprising, I suppose. But, you and I were talking before we hit record, how many people can really tell? It's in some cases, it's almost impossible to tell.
Right. And we covered a story last week where they said that, like 97% couldn't really tell the difference when they were side by side. And here's the thing, Mike, and you know this as well as I do, it's just going to get better. And it's made incredible progress in just the last 18 months. What's it going to sound like in another 18 months or 2 years or 3 years? It's only going to get better and better and harder to tell the difference between what's AI generated and what's not.
No, and as you and I were talking earlier, it's so many people just when they listen to music, but they don't listen to it like a lot of the people listening to this podcast, which is where they can tell if it's maybe a drum machine, if it's sequenced, if it's a sample. The vast majority of people that listen to music just can't tell.
Yeah, so that's not how they listen to music.
Not exactly. So when looking at the data by demographic, again, Gen Zers are the age group most likely to say that they're fine with AI being used to create music without human contributions. Baby boomers, meanwhile, are the most likely to say that the original music creators should be paid when a creator uses AI to mimic their work.
Right. And, we were talking about this stat that you hear bounced around a lot, that half the people who buy vinyl don't own a turntable. Mm-hmm. And when you sort of see that broken out, yeah, that's true with millennials, but not with boomers. For the older you are, the more apt you are to have an actual turntable if you're buying vinyl. So, the article goes on to say that slicing the data by political affiliation, there's not that huge difference across party lines. 22% of Republican respondents are fine with AI music being created without humans, as opposed to about 18% Democrats, so roughly the same.
Right. It's worth highlighting that majorities in every single age demographic aren't yet sold on the idea that AI songs should be created without human musical contributions. Maybe that represents the early stages of adoption of AI tools among musicians and producers.
Yeah, or it's something more fundamental, as in, what is a song if it doesn't reflect the emotion, voice, or lyrics of the person performing and producing it? It could just be background music on a playlist that is, hastily queued up without regard for the actual artists who, comprise it, which leads us to those human artists. Many of them are saying that the economics of the music industry are broken.
Right. Well, let's talk about artist pay. No, it's not AI that broke the business model of the industry, but the rise of free legal streaming, which helped the major labels bounce back, but didn't help many of the non-star artists who suddenly went from collecting $10 for album downloads to 3/1000ths of a penny royalty per stream. It reshaped the landscape. Now there's movements, so you can think the United Musicians and Allied Workers partnership with Congresswoman Rashid Tlaib on Living Wage for Musicians Act that aims to boost per stream pay, that are debated among artists as they figure out how to piece together an income.
Right. While the goal of some of these campaigns, one slogan, pay us at least 1 cent per stream, is to generate awareness, really. They haven't really broken through to the mainstream, the poll shows. While not majorities, a plurality of Americans in every age group thinks artists are generally paid fairly, by streaming services and from concerts and touring. Tell that to a touring artist and you'll see what they say. And here's how sort of those attitudes break down. They ask in this poll, are artists paid fairly by? And the first one is streaming services. And generally, most people, whether you're a Gen Z or a baby boomer, around 40% of them feel that they are paid a fair amount.
Strikingly, though, some millennials, like 21%, think they're being paid too much. It's like, what? How is that possible? Well, it is. And one of the other questions they ask are artists paid fairly for concerts and touring? And there you have a fair amount of people, up to, almost 30% saying they're paid too much. A lot of people in the middle kind of say they're paid a fair amount. But man, that's kind of interesting that people are saying they're paid too much.
Yeah, and I don't even know if they know exactly what they're paid. Maybe they're thinking about ticket prices and things like that. There's so many other charts and graphs in this article. You really need to check this thing out. It's beautifully presented.
Well laid out.
They ask if you agree with certain statements and how often you go to concerts and how often you buy merch. And the last sort of chart we'll talk about is, that one. How often do you buy merch while you're at a concert? And it's interesting, only 9% say every time, right? But you get to some of the older demos and some of them, like 32%, say they never do. And I find that really interesting.
Absolutely. Well, a caveat, if you scrolled by this data point and noticed that a majority of Gen Zers say they'd be willing to pay more for a concert ticket or a streaming service if they knew that the money would go directly to the artist. Yes, per the poll, 32% of America never goes to concerts, and the same figure never buys artist merch at concerts. But there's a potentially interesting idea there for streaming services and venues to market themselves as artist-friendly. Now, you do know a few platforms have tried this. 10 years ago, Tidal had marketed itself as offering better streaming payouts than bigger rivals. Now it touts sound quality as a big differentiator. which leads the survey to
listening habits. But, there's that divide, Mike, that we talk about all the time of what people say and then what they actually do in some of these polls. A few side notes. The survey shows America's favorite music genre is rock, and also broke down listeners' habits by political affiliation. Republicans' favorite music genres are rock, country, and pop, while Democrats favor rock, rap, and hip hop, and then pop and R&B.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And where do Americans listen? Well, Gen Zers were the most likely generation to name Spotify, Apple Music, and SoundCloud. Gen Zers and millennials were likeliest to select YouTube Music. Millennials were the most likely to say they use Pandora, among other services they use. And boomers were the age group with the highest percent of respondents who selected Sirius XM, Amazon Music, and FM radio.
Interesting.
Of course, all age groups listen to most of these services, though, and it isn't about exclusive listening, just seeing some patterns.
Yeah, super interesting. And then we get to music discovery, which, that's another era that's been massively reshaped by robots and algorithms. About 7% of Americans say they find new songs via critics or blogs far behind streaming service suggestions, 27%, or playing in the background while out. Everybody's got that portable device and they can see what's playing in their coffee shop or restaurant. That's about 31% discovering new music that way. At least the radio, 44%, is still up there for discovery, compared to the obvious leader, social media, and that's 45%. It may go without saying, but most Americans think the sound quality on streaming services is pretty good for the price. And then they have a really great chart in here about asking what's your favorite genre. And they point that out, which is super interesting, and where people find new music. Like we just said, social media is sort of the top dog when it gets to that. But again, there's so many charts in this article, and it's just really fascinating to sort of look through all of this, how you discover music, and do you play an instrument, which is really surprising. So we highly recommend that you check out this article and the charts that go with it.
And the final story, it's from Robert Levine over at Billboard. The AI music deals are here. They raise big, complicated questions. Yes, they certainly do. After UMG, Udio, and Jima OpenAI, some of the parameters around AI and music are being defined, but they are leading to more complicated issues. Like many technologies, generative AI developed slowly, then suddenly all at once. That's how it looks from a music business perspective anyway.
Right, and goes on to write that one day a few top executives at UMG were telling me about it as a future issue. The next fake Drake made news, and now AI-assisted artists account for a third of the top 10 on Billboard's November 15th country digital song sales chart, whatever that means. Breaking Rust, Kane Walker, the names credited with the songs are about as country as a server farm.
Right. So where did those songs come from? The assumption is that kind of generative AI software that created them was trained on copyrighted songs and recordings, presumably without a license, since few have been granted. That's probably going to change soon. On November 11th, German rights group Jima won its infringement case against OpenAI, which only involves song lyrics, but the principles are the same, and it is also suing Suno. After all three major labels sued Suno and Udio in the U.S., Universal Music Group announced a settlement with Udio in late October.
Right. The nature of these deals could shape the music business of the future, or could be remembered as something music executives thought was important for some reason. I can't recall. Although little is known about the UMG deal, its unexpected provision is that it restricts the music quote-unquote output created by AI by removing the ability of users to download it. That's a fundamental shift in expectations and suggests that UMG envisions AI music as existing apart from music on streaming services, more of a hobby akin to an amateur garage band than a professional product.
Interesting. Well, obviously, there's no stopping the flood of AI music, and Udio users who want to free their creations can play them and record them to another device. But it's interesting to note how Udio and UMG think this will work. The UMG-Udio deal is opt-in for artists and songwriters, so it will take time to see what they think and whether they sign. But the deal casts Udio as the good guy, eager to work with the industry's biggest company, less combative in its public statements, and more willing to talk, according to two sources. Suno is already on its way to becoming the bad guy, responding to the label lawsuit by accusing the majors of reverting to the old lawyer-led playbook, hiring Timbaland to create some space between labels and artists and taking a more oppositional stance, according to one source.
Right. It seems worth noting that the line about the lawyer-led playbook may not have aged as well as Suno CEO Mikey Schulman thinks. Anyone who is 30 today was 5 when the major labels sued Napster, and 10 years old when the Supreme Court ruled in the Grokster case.
Wow, that's putting it in perspective.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what the better strategy is in the abstract. Udio scored the first deal, but Suno is said to be raising money at a $2 billion valuation, although it's facing a GEMA lawsuit that Udio isn't. Now that Udio has gone legit, though, Suno has a big incentive to do the opposite, just to differentiate itself.
Yeah, in tactical terms, it'll be both more powerful and more vulnerable. If Suno loses its big court case in the U.S., it could get stuck setting lawsuits under terms worse than Udio's. If the decision has limited scope or splits, which seems more likely than some executives realize, it could have to make some of the same feature set compromises that Udio, but under pressure. If it wins the case completely, though, it ends up with a product that is superior to the competition with a much better cost structure.
Well, making the first big deal also gives UMG the power to set a pattern that could influence later agreements, at least in structure, if not specifics. So far, the big issue executives are talking about is the split between labels and publishers. The latter, which customarily get half of sync rights revenue, want the same deal, and this is one of the few cases, along with sync licenses, where rights to a song might be useful without a recording. In the case of sync, the song can be played by another artist. Theoretically, an AI could be trained on a written composition.
So how does all of that affect the structure of licensing? I'm offering more questions than answers, but in this case, I don't think anyone has all the solutions. But we should know more soon. And the one thing we know for certain is it's going to be very interesting.
Well, yes, indeed. That's an understatement, isn't it, Jay? It's, gosh. But, you know, when there's a piece in there where they kind of talk about some of this, the fake Drake and some of that stuff. It seems like that was decades ago, but that really wasn't.
No.
But when you think about the timeline of when that started happening to where we are right now, man, oh man, it is dramatic how quickly we have gotten to where we are.
Right. He talks about how it was sort of slow until it wasn't. And now it's upon us. So
it's upon us, and we're talking about deal structures and all of that. Boy, it is absolutely stunning. Well, we have come to the end of the show. If you do enjoy the show, please just tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. Big thanks to our sponsors, SoundCloud, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly could not do it without them. And of course, that was music by the Licorice Quartet. So, on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening in, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.